fell in love with photography.
Grab your heart, twist it, and take it back out.
Friggin' blew my mind.
Very welcome and good evening to this first talk of our series, Die Salon. Die Salon was inspired by the Salon culture in Berlin, and we would very much invite you to ask questions throughout the conversations. If you have one, just raise your hand. I will come and hand you the microphone. It should be an open, interactive conversation. My name is Anna Ramsko-Glavit, and I'm the director of Dokumentale, together with my lovely colleague Vivian Schröder. And today I have the absolute pleasure to welcome next to me Jessica Valdez, who is, hi there.
Hello.
Who is part of our Film and Impact program as an impact producer with the film Beyond Our Backyards, or Between Our Backyards, that's right. It's a film about lithium mining in Chile and Serbia. It's currently in production, and about the struggles of civil society to combat lithium mining. It's going to be a beautiful film. I think it's going to come out next year, so watch out for that one. And next to her, we have Elias König, who is here with his book Klimagerechtigkeit, and he is looking into the interconnection on climate injustice. So thank you very much, both of you, to be here tonight. For all of you in the live stream, we will end the conversation, we will end the live stream after the conversation, but you will have the possibility, if we spark your interest, to see Yintah, the film we are showing afterwards, twice more. Unfortunately, Freda, who wanted to participate, the main protagonist of Yintah, can't join us today due to technical issues on our side. I'm extremely sorry for that. We would all love to hear her voice as well. She's the beautiful woman on the picture, and you will get to know her in the film quite well, and she's very peaceful and powerful and inspirational. So, but let's dive into the topic. We are talking about the ethical implication of climate change and climate justice. And I wanted to ask both of you for a very short definition of what climate justice means to you, because in the last years I've heard quite a lot of different variations of the definition of it. Maybe Jessica, you want to start with that.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, thanks a lot for the invitation, and hello everyone. It's great to have you here. And well, it's not just me talking right now. I hope I can convey the message also from the movements in Serbia, in Chile, and also from Portugal, with whom we have been working over the past years. And I would say that climate justice is perhaps one of these terms that we've been listening to, especially in the last couple of years, but it has evolved, I don't know, since way too long. Elias and I, we were having a conversation just before you arrived, and climate justice has existed for over the past 500 years, if I may say so. And it stems also from movements, right? It's not just a definition that some scientists came out of, because, well, it tells us much more to really try to look that we must connect to each other in the way that those who have been historically marginalized, those who have been impoverished, from those whose lands have been grabbed, and from which plants, animals, their families have been just, you know, they have extracted their life from them, that we actually pay respect to all of that, and that we just try to make dignity. That's really, I would say, the agenda that the social movements and peasants, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color have been trying to tell us. And I hope we can just listen to it a little bit more.
You were nodding quite a bit, but I'm sure you have like maybe something to add or slightly different take on it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also very excited to be here. And I think I would just underline that point. I mean, of course, there's a philosophical discipline called climate ethics, where people speak a lot about climate justice, but that's actually quite recent. It starts in the early 2000s, some early publications in the 1990s. A little bit older is the engagement on the part of social movements. So when the United Nations started sort of seriously dealing with climate change in the 1990s, so in 1992 there was the Rio Earth Conference, 1997 there was the Kyoto Protocol, there was the feeling on the part of social movements that the version of climate protection that these countries, big countries, were proposing was unjust, right? And so in order to distinguish their vision for combating climate change from this mainstream approach, which was about carbon trading, about these neoliberal solutions to the problem, they came up with the term climate justice to distinguish themselves, and I think that's always important to remember.
If we look at the film Yintah, but also on what you're shooting currently, it's mainly for big, huge for-profit companies trying to evict mostly marginalized or indigenous people from their land. In the case of Yintah, they have this independent territory, and despite that, they march through their land. And we have another film in the program which is Standing Above the Clouds, where it's about a telescope being built on a high mountain on Hawaii, and the indigenous people protest against that because it's their holy mountain. And then on the other side, we often have the argument that we need that progress, that we need the resources, we need the gas lines, and I mean, partly it's true. If I look, we here live on that. So how to explain that the ethical implication of what we are doing here in terms also of climate justice? Who wants to go first?
All right. Well, this question of progress. Tonight's talk is called Beyond Progress, and I would really like to know, why are we so obsessed with progress? So for me, this is what has been hurting us the most. As humans, as any other species who is living in the world. I don't know if out there other species is really posing this question of the progress, you know, and we are. And but I don't know if we, but definitely perhaps much more people like that have grown up in modern societies like I have, or also much more in the so-called global North countries. So this idea of progress and the ethical implication, I think, I don't know, but it's just like an euphemism to me. It's just something nice to say. It's like, we're going to have ethical progress. I don't know anything like that. I frankly don't know how to answer to this question, because I don't know anything that it's ethical progress, and so the limitation is already there in the question. I think there's many more important things right now to discuss than progress. I think we must talk about how we regenerate this planet, how we really, which we can, that we can do as a species. We know very well how to regenerate ourselves. We can relearn how to be more caregiving. We can definitely just rethink and redesign systems that are going to be in accordance with how we actually live and how we just exchange with each other. So that's my take on the question, I would say.
Maybe
Yeah, I like that.
I would like to put it like more on the point for you, because you're German and we live in a country that is madly in love with cars. And I think for lots of people, having a car means kind of a freedom. And now we are pushing for electric cars, which in the case of Serbia and Chile means a lot of despair for the people there. And on the other hand, here it's sold as a huge progress, as like a very positive green thing. How can we explain the implications of that progress, and how can we make, because you wrote a beautiful book on that, and I guess you have been traveling quite a bit with it. How can we make people aware and rethink what progress is?
Right, okay. So maybe on progress, the term, I think it's quite an interesting term, right? Because a lot of us would describe ourselves as progressives, right? So we're very used to the language of progress, and it's one of the fundamental terms of modernity, right? And there are like philosophers or public intellectuals like Steven Pinker. I don't know if you're familiar with that guy. He's the Harvard professor with the curly hair who runs around and says that, you know, we live in the best period ever in history. Everyone would want to be a human in 2024. Don't we have all that progress? And it should make us a little bit suspicious, right? So first of all, what kind of function do these arguments have in our society right now when we are dealing with the possibility of nuclear war, climate breakdown, and so on? It seems that these arguments are sometimes very ideological, because they tell us, you know, it's fine, there are all of these problems, but you should be happy. It's much better than 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and so on. And I think the other question, and that's maybe what you were hinting at with, you know, the lifestyle that some people are living in the global north, that whose progress are we talking about, right? And at what cost does it come? And in the social sciences, there's this term of the imperial mode of living to describe that, you know, progress in the global north, of course, does come at a very heavy cost in other parts of the world and also in other social classes.
So as this should be an open conversation, if any one of you has a question, please just raise your hand and I will hand you the microphone. We are really more than happy to open up the conversation to everyone. Okay. I think in the preparation I called it the global fatigue on climate action. I have the feeling that we change the society's perspective on climate action changes with multiple crises unfolding. It becomes less and less important in the public. And also that we have a communication problem there, that many people don't, maybe have slightly similar ideas, but they don't feel picked up and like included in the conversation. And in particular, if we want to change the minds of everyone, how can we work there, and in which context is that with climate justice?
I can take it maybe first. Yeah, I think you're right when you talk about a global fatigue, right? So in 2019, 2020, you had in Germany, but I think in many other parts of the world as well, massive demonstrations with millions of participants calling for climate justice. Also in other topics, actually, there was, you know, quite, the media debates were quite progressive, to use that term. And now when you look in the newspapers in 2024, everything we're debating is like curbing migration, warfare. It's become a much more regressive environment. And I think one thing that's important to remember is that that last wave of the climate movement wasn't the first wave of the climate movement. You already had big mobilizations in the late 90s, early 2000s. That then went away. They were sort of eaten up by the anti-globalization movement. You had big climate mobilizations around the Copenhagen summit in 2009 that then were subsequently replaced by the financial crisis and concerns related to that. So it's not the first time that sort of this wave of climate movements has ebbed a little bit, and I'm sure there'll be another wave at some point. But I think the strategic questions that we could ask now is sort of, what are progressive topics that are related to the climate crisis that we could use? And I think part of the analysis in climate justice is precisely that the climate crisis is linked to other topics, right? So fighting, for instance, militarism, which is a sort of a very big topic right now, is of course related also to climate change, because militaries are some of the largest emitters of CO2 in the world. And so I think one task for the movement would be to sort of look at the current situation and see maybe where can we make a difference, and what topics work right now and what topics are maybe sort of a little bit outside of the field of sight of the public for now.
Would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, sure. I think I will pick right now in how some of the issues can also be in supporting each other's movements, definitely. I believe that part of the fatigue can be individual, like an individual level, of course. If I am out there talking about how lithium mining, it's really not the next solution to just have like a just transition, and I just keep day after day not meeting with people who are going to just be willing to listen. At some point, you might ask yourself, well, why am I even doing this? And I think one of the things that we have to be very clear is that many of the victories that we have reached are also part of what others movements have been done. So it's not that we are standing there out of zero and going out there to fight. It's really a fight that many have fought like before us, and this is one place where I can really get some of my strength, which I do. I pray, I read poetry, I read the news that I need to read in order to nurture myself. I can think of my niece, who is not necessarily my niece. She's the daughter of one of my best friends, and I am like, I am doing this for her. And I am doing this for the kids I go and teach to. So it's you just find like one reason to keep doing the fight, and I think it's very normal that nowadays many of us can experience such fatigue, because yeah, I mean it happens. But if you can rest with your community, and also it's just going to make everything just become a little bit lesser in a way.
Some years ago, I had a conversation with a journalist who is pushing for solution-based journalism. And I mean, when I opened the newspaper, or it was the headlines of a newspaper that came by mail the other day, it was like, it was all negative, and on top there was war, there was despair, and there was the climate crisis, and it was all just super negative communication. And I stopped reading, because I was like, okay, I can't do anything, I can't read that, it's too much for me right now. So the question is, how could positive approaches to climate solutions and a more solution-driven communication in the sense of climate crisis change maybe the waveform of which you just was speaking, and give again a spark to like engage people?
I guess I was just letting this question like sit a bit, and I think many of us have been with purpose, like on purpose, like disempowered, like telling us that we can do nothing more than just go out there and consume, just to, you know, tone down our anxiety, or just to feel better about ourselves, or this is the way to take care about ourselves, to consume something. So, and which is our way to do it. I'm not going to say no to that, but I am wondering if this happiness that we are looking for, or this comfort that we are looking for, is so important. Like, yeah, I think there's values which are very important, like we are healthy, that we are just safe, and I think these values are very worth working for. I believe that in the way that we, from the place where we are, try to regain this power is extremely important. So what I was talking about before on regenerative systems is that, sure, I went to engineering school, and I also learned things about cars and about how you can get, over 3,000 pieces to build a car. And I learned this in Germany, right? And you needed to get a piece at whatever cost it is. No, not at whatever cost, at the lowest cost possible, so that it can get assembled in another country and that it says made in Germany. And I was like, what is the purpose of this whole thing? So if we keep doing these jobs, you're gonna lose your purpose on what this, if these things make sense. You need to regain your power and be like, okay, I am able to make something that can regenerate the whole thing. And this, you can do it from the profession that you are making, from the conversations you're having with friends. You are not just this consumer that they are telling you you are. You are definitely just more than that. Like, you are a teacher, you are a mom, you are a good friend. And this is where regeneration should do its thing, right? So
I have a personal question on that, because I find it very interesting. What made you from an engineer to an impact producer? I mean, for that film, you're basically seeing how to get out the message and how to combine social movements on different places of the earth. What was like the moment of change? If you want to share, if not, that's fine.
Yeah, sure. I think I haven't stopped being an engineer. I am very nerdy about a lot of things, and I use a lot of things that I learned in my career also in the impact producing field. And I'm still learning how to be an impact producer. So it's not something that it's, super fixed. But I think in both of the careers, you can pursue how to do something meaningful, and how to really just create a system, not just you yourself, the individual. And this is the beauty on it. You see systems. I told you I'm a nerd, so I see systems everywhere, right? I see a system when I go out there in a park, when I am in my house, where I am talking with other people in society. Then I guess for me, these are not something that it's super separated. I can be the impact producer and the engineer. So it's not super
divided. But Elias, you wanted to add something before my little private question in between.
Yeah, I think this is super interesting. I didn't go to engineering school, but I work now in a university that is mainly engineering university, and we have a very small philosophy department, which is where I work. And a lot of our students are very used to this solutions-based approach. They can solve any problem that you give to them. And I think there are a lot of problems in the world that we can solve. I would caution a little bit in seeing the climate crisis as a problem. I think the climate crisis is a bit bigger than a problem, right? I think it's like everything, right? And so I think sometimes framing it as a problem that you can solve really plays into these ideas that, yeah, we just need to invent a technology or something to beat climate change, or we just need to come up with some slight reform in our system that's going to solve the problem. And from my point of view, I think actually sort of climate changes should be everything change, and we really need a lot more revolutionary change, I think. And so I think part of that change, we will need a lot of different kind of solutions, but I would caution sort of as framing the entire problem as one that can be simply solved.
But if you say, that's also just out of curiosity, if you say you are in a mainly engineering university and being there on the philosophy department side, do you have that discussion between making money with what you do, finding solutions, and like curiosity that sometimes is also very harmful to others if it's not reflected very good?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think part of the problem is like, what kind of questions do we even ask, right? I think a lot of people have very good questions to ask, right? Like, for instance, how do you design a house that's much better isolated, right? A very important question to ask. We definitely have to improve isolation everywhere in the world if we want to save energy. And I think a lot of the questions actually that, for instance, students answer for their master's thesis, in the case of my institution, are paid for by companies that are going to hire these students afterwards. And of course, they have certain questions that they think are more interesting. And unfortunately, the largest employer of students at our university, it's in the Netherlands, is Shell, which is a major oil company, right? So the kind of solutions that Shell is interested in, I think, are inherently limited by the fact that Shell is a major oil and gas company that's legally required to make as much money as possible, right? And the best way to make money in our current system is to drill as much oil and gas as possible. And they can distract you by doing a little bit of green stuff on the side, but that's their business core, right? And they just elected a new CEO who ran on the platform that I'm going to drill more oil and gas than the previous CEO. So that's where we are right now.
And I think what's interesting, what's often overlooked in discussions is what you just said, they are legally obligated to make as much profit as they can. So going back to the ethical question and to the interconnection of everything, how much is also rooted in our way of making people do certain things, the whole legal framework of companies, and wouldn't that be a rather easy point to change? Maybe? You're not lawyers, I know, but just maybe you have ideas on that. You're also dealing with companies. And then I will open up to the audience. I mean, lithium is the same.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, going back to the question, like, why am I doing this, right? So I'm working with Aline Juarez and Juan Donoso, who are the ones who are the directors of the documentary. And when Juan approached to me about, I don't know, 2 years ago, he showed me the footage of the lithium extraction mines, and I cried, to be very honest. Like, not just because I hated it so much. I don't know. I hated it. I was sad and I was mad at the same time. And I tell you why, because I also happen to come from a mining town, and it could have been my town. It looked exactly the same. So for me, if I feel I am a very lucky, privileged person. Like, my mom was a medical doctor in this town, and she's the one who was treating miners, right? If you ask them, are you going to be a miner? Yes, I'm going to be a miner. That was the job to do. And their families, what is the destiny? They might become miners as well. Or they also tell them, well, go to school, maybe you're going to have a different future, right? But here it goes my question. Who of us, like, please raise your hand, would like to be a miner today? Who of us? So I didn't pick to be one. And why are we giving these jobs to other people? Why are we saying that there's things like green mining out there? Would you be a green miner? I mean, you can ask me questions, right? Like, it's not, it's a conversation.
What is green mining?
What is green mining? Like, it
Sorry.
doesn't exist. Like, companies, as I was telling you, this is a 500-year story. It didn't start yesterday, so it doesn't exist. And Shell can come, and also, I'm very sorry for the engineering students, really. But they do have, I hope, please do, like, just don't work for a fucking Shell, like, don't, like, just try to be an engineer and engineer solutions, like, do something else. Like, I'm becoming emotional right now, and it's all right, but these things shouldn't happen, like.
Are there questions, comments, thoughts from the audience? You're really very, very warmly invited, as Jessica just said, ask me a question or give me a comment. Yes, at the back. I'm now breaching the sound.
Thank you very much. I have a question regarding the connection that both of you implied a bit between climate change, climate crisis, and capitalism. And I mean, you both draw that connection, and then you both kind of went a bit in the idea of like, well, progress is part of the problem. We're developing like more products to consume. There's like a limited planet with like the idea of unlimited progress and so on. But then I wonder, why focus on the only nice thing that capitalism produces? Like, it is nice to have a lot of products to consume. There is something enjoyable about being able to choose between like different products, I don't know. And then there's so many other parts of capitalism that are so much more worse. So why focus on the one that like everyday average people in some way profit of or can enjoy? Isn't it more important to look at like the production side? Isn't it more important to look at like the interplay of labor and capital, or the oppression of indigenous people, or the, as you said already a little bit, Elias, the militarization of society, the rise of fascism? Isn't these more important aspects to look at when battling climate crisis and climate imperialism?
Thank you so much. I think that was a question, at least, that I hear a lot in conversations. Would any one of you feel like picking that question up? You go first.
Okay. I hope I grasp it correctly, because I haven't seen the film as well, but I'm pretty sure it also looks at sort of the sides of extraction, right, and so on. I absolutely think that's important. And you raised a whole lot of different aspects of the system that we could look at, and I completely agree. I think all of these are important. I can just maybe add some thoughts to the question, right? So one thing that people are debating in the climate movement is precisely where to put the focus of your actions. And there is a way, it's a sort of a very traditionally analytical way of looking at capitalism, where you have production, circulation, consumption as the three sort of sides of capitalism. And so there are production struggles. You could say, for instance, Ende Gelände, they go right to, you know, where the coal is being taken off and burned, right? And I would say a lot of labor struggles are also production struggles, right? And then you have circulation struggles, which are more like you try to block something from getting to another site, right? For which you need less people, but sometimes it's also easier to fight these struggles. And then you have consumption struggles, which are quite popular in late neoliberalism, because we all think of ourselves primarily as consumers. So sort of I will not fly, I will not eat meat, and so on. These are like consumption struggles, right? And I would say, you know, there's been a lot of critique. I would say that consumption struggles are also worth thinking about, but I think they work best when you collectively decide to not consume something, right? And that's called a boycott. I think that's much more effective than you individually choosing something. So I guess that's just adding to your question, but maybe some ways to think about it.
But if we talk about collectively deciding on something, I know that before Corona, there was this initiative of, for example, a plastic-free day in the month or week, where like, as far as I know, it started in Switzerland, and they collectively decided every month they do 1 week absolutely plastic-free in order to pressure companies to produce plastic-free stuff. But it was a nice movement to watch, but how much impact does it have and where is like the tipping point where it makes sense? And do you have any positive examples in that way where it worked? Sorry, 4 questions, and then I will go back to the audience.
Well, I think boycotts work best when they're combined with struggles in these other 2 spheres that I just talked about. So for instance, the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa is actually a very good example where you, of course, the main stage is in South Africa, right? Where you have coal miners striking, you have more radical factions, but you also have, I think, in Europe and in North America, people who, on a massive scale, refuse to engage with the South African racist regime, right? And so, I wouldn't discount that as a factor. I think sort of the main action, right, often happens at the site of production, but I think it becomes very effective when it's combined with boycotts and other forms of action. And I think it's also interesting when you look at fossil fuels. So we just talked about Shell, right? So in the 1990s, you had a massive campaign of like literally burning down Shell petrol stations in Europe, throughout Europe, because Shell was very involved with the South African apartheid regime, right? So there are actually histories prior to climate activism where people have targeted large fossil fuel companies quite effectively.
Not to be like the devil's advocate, but how, I know in the case of apartheid, it was effective that the system did change, but I mean, Shell wasn't really affected by that, was it?
Yeah, I agree. I think we should totally abolish Shell, right? I also think it's a bad strategy to just ask Shell to do something different, right? I think if we take Shell not just as Shell, but as the example of the modern fossil fuel corporation in general, right? I think we need to think of ways of how we organically compost these companies, right? Because of course, it's not an easy question. There are a lot of livelihoods who depend on that. There are a lot of different interests involved. Also, you can't just nationalize Shell because it's a multinational corporation. So if the Netherlands would just say, okay, Shell, we're going to nationalize Shell, then how do you guarantee that people in Nigeria, in Singapore and other parts of the world where Shell is active, you know, get their fair share and so on? So I think it's a hard question, but it's maybe one that can lead us to think about a world that actually goes beyond capitalism.
You add something. I just wanted to say something about Shell, as we are maybe something uplightening. If there's not that much about that. But as we are a non-fiction festival and talking about storytelling, if you want to see something very funny in combination with Shell, go and Google Yes Men and Shell. They are hilarious. They really, they made a really funny stunt with Shell, which was shortly news worldwide and very effective. So if you're looking for humorful documentary on a very harsh issue, that's an absolute recommendation. It's a bit older, but it's still very current and very funny, really funny. Yes, please. Sorry, I have to.
No. I'm also very happy that you're giving us these tips. I will definitely check it out. And I hope I have a good laugh.
You will love these two white guys who are just standing there and giving a press conference in the name of Shell.
Oh, okay. That sounds super. I was also thinking of many of the efforts that I think it's great to think in matters of success, but I also think it's good to celebrate the big successes, but also the small victories that we have. And when I think, for instance, in the work that the movements in Chile and Serbia and Portugal they're coming together. So we're talking about people like you and I that are living in communities where mining is happening, right? And where they have been fighting over the years against Rio Tinto, which is the largest mining company in the world, right? To say, hey, we have the right to say no to mining. And they managed to stop them already some years ago in Serbia. But then, of course, like right now, Europe again has this need of saying that, okay, you know what, we need to find renewable energy solutions, and this is why we are going now again to Serbia to get the lithium from there. And so this is why maybe if you look at it over the past weeks, there has been also many people in Serbia out in the streets, which are
huge protests.
Yes,
I was very fascinated, and there was very little reporting here about that.
Really, really massive, and they managed to stop it years ago, and with a lot of work. I hope we really from there, but also from here, I hope we really solidarize with many Serbian movements that we actually managed to stop this madness. So it is something that movements, sometimes they have really no chill. So it's really trying to stay very much alert, which I am also very sure we're going to also see this in Yintah, like, come on, 10 years, right? They have been reporting 10 years of, being day after day, protecting your land.
And giving up and everything for that, because as you know, I won't spoil the film now. I'm sorry for that. But going back to the question, you just mentioned something that brings me to the next question. That's right way around. You mentioned the connections to Germany and the need of us for lithium. So now Olaf Scholz was in Serbia. At the same time, we have a government that wants to stand for green renewable solutions and promotes electric cars quite a lot. So from our side, also talking about the international solidarity, how could we push and change that agenda? Because I don't know, if we look outside of our own bubbles, I think that most of the people are still convinced that electric cars are something really, really positive. So what to start here in Germany? Maybe tomorrow after the film, or tonight after the film.
So what can I say? So this, again, thinking again as an individuum, I don't know if it really helps us. Like, we're thinking about cars for what? One person? 2 people? Do we need this, really?
It's very comfortable.
It's very comfortable, I agree.
And I think people don't like to give up on comfort.
But but look at how much it's costing to stay comfortable in this country. So this is the thing. So of course I understand it's going to be a little bit less comfortable to take the subway in areas where there's subway, because I can have this conversation in Berlin, but how about we go to rural areas in Germany or small towns where people have to learn how to drive and da-da-da. I get it, all right. But then again, why to look for the easiest solution for this side, not considering people in Serbia or in Portugal or to whatever the mining company or whatever choice decide to move at. So I think it's quite important just to know that it is really not so difficult to give up on some comfort for today. In Germany, we like to think on long term, right, and in the future, that you can also have actually a living in the future, because it is. I really would like to not make it so abstract. Climate change, you know. Yeah, this is what we are talking about, of the life of generations. So just try to think on less comfort for today, for, you know, a good living on tomorrow. Try to inform yourself on what's going on. Really, I mean, listen to some of the activists, like the one that we are going to see, the documentary, it's becoming the way we need to re-educate ourselves. I believe so. It's just very small step. Just see how films like this make you feel and bring it to your daily life.
Elias, would you like to add something on that? Maybe also from a more philosophical perspective, because the question of giving up comfort is, I think, for many people, as we are also like, we love to choose from different things. It's what I've seen is over generations, like my own family. My mom grew up in a very tiny flat. I grew up in a much bigger flat, and for me, only imagining going back to where she had a rather happy childhood is unimaginable. 4 people, 30 square meters, breaks my head, to be honest. I mean, I know it works. I know it's the harsh reality of many, many people on our planet, so we are extremely privileged. I'm very, very, very privileged. But going back there is, I think, sometimes for a lot of people very hard to imagine, or it's at least perceived of many people of going back there.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a reason that the German climate movement, for instance, hasn't really put up with the car industry yet, right? The main struggle the last 10 years has been the coal industry, which is tiny compared to the car industry, right? You have something like 20,000 people working coal jobs, maybe a few more related, but it's nothing compared to the German car industry. And I remember when Fridays for Future had their big protests in 2019, very quickly there was this massive Facebook group called Fridays for Hubraum, which had like something like 400,000 members, many of whom were...
Fridays for Hubraum, sorry, Fridays for cars? No. Sorry,
yeah,
I'm lost.
It was a Facebook group of mainly men who liked their cars and hated Greta Thunberg and were sharing memes, and they felt, you could see that they felt very viscerally threatened by a climate movement, right? Because so I think it's going to be a very, very big thing to crack. And I think part of it is our notion of freedom, right? If we're talking philosophy, right? Because we're living in an age of fossil liberalism where everything we think about freedom is determined by a fossil fuel lifestyle. And I think, yeah, it's really hard. I think it's going to take a while to rethink these things, but maybe just to think about, yeah, isn't it also nice? So in Germany, a while ago, you had the €9 ticket, right? Where you can use public transportation unlimited. You can go all the way to Sylt or some really far away place for €9, which is also freedom, right, in a way, and it's nice. I mean, if the train isn't too full, but sort of to rethink, you know, what could freedom mean beyond this idea that, oh, I can, you know, I can take my car and drive somewhere into the woods, which is what every car commercial tells us all the time, and we're constantly bombarded with this particular notion of freedom.
But there I'm back with the positive solution-driven storytelling. Don't need we, instead of saying, give up the freedom of your car, saying, we offer you a different kind of freedom, like changing the whole narrative of, because I think then it gets easy, like that's what good advertisement does, and that works most of the time. So how could we bring that maybe, or if you think it's a good approach into the discussion, where are the pain points to like make people having fun fighting climate crisis, which is so utterly important?
And I think you just gave us the magic formula on how to get this sorted.
No.
No, I mean, in a way, yes, because of course, I mean, if I am just letting everyone know, this can also be fun and invigorating, and it is not everything just like, oh, you know, but definitely part of when you are like so near to the problem, you're also very near to the solution, right? I think that that it is indeed very important that we don't need to learn that this is a boring, tiring, and only sacrificing thing to do. It's a side of it, right? But there's, as I was saying, like there's a bright future out there in the way that I am taking care of today. Of course, I mean, this forest that we are talking about today is going to be there for many more generations to visit, and I think one of the thing that the climate crisis is also doing, I mean, we don't know how much the psychological and spiritual costs of this actually has on people, but the more that people really get to experience again things that maybe our grandparents did, like very easy things just like gardening, or also to learn much more about other living forms, can make us really appreciate like what we have also today to have this creative potential.
I was Elias giving the idea before, and I think that was a very, very beautiful closing. We are also continuing with the questions in the room. I just have to say bye to everyone watching online, because we have the absolute pleasure, and I'm very thankful that Alex Berlin is live streaming all of the talks and are giving us actually on-screen TV time. So thank you to all of you, and have a lovely evening. Hope to see you in the cinemas for one of the screenings, recommending on the issue Yintah and Standing Above the Sky, which is also a very beautiful film about extremely strong women fighting the climate crisis. And in the room, I'm very happy to hand over the microphone for a question.
Yeah, so thank you for the discussion. I find it interesting, and on the other hand, I feel like we're talking about a lot of different things. And one, you know, the first person plural, we, is one where I'm wondering, who are we if we're saying we? Because sometimes I feel like, yeah, it's this German situation, our government, like when you said something, or we speak about our personal situation, consumer choices, how much they actually matter or don't matter or can matter. And then something like Shell, right? A company, like corporate company, who nobody would like really here probably want to include into the we, but who in their own discourses, in their own greenwashing, probably also like to latch on to that we, right? So I'm wondering what is really, yeah, isn't partly the frustration, for instance, that our consumer choices wouldn't really matter if we face something like Shell, and can we all really lump it together, or is it more important to differentiate who we're talking about and who maybe feels included if we say we? Isn't it also those that maybe have the choice to consume and not those that are affected, like in the worst ways? So these are just also some questions. It's not that I have any answers to them. I just want to throw them out there.
Thank you so much. They're very valid questions. Does any one of you want to talk about the we, I was mentioning the bubble before, because often I realize that if I say we, I'm referring just to the people inside of my very, very privileged and very tiny critic thinking bubble.
I think I need a minute to think about the question. I don't know if you want to go for it now.
Yeah, I can freestyle a bit. I think you can take it in a lot of ways, right? One thing that I've been thinking about is in terms of the climate movement concretely, which is what I write about and where I locate myself, that the we is often very exclusive, right? So, for instance, we only consider movements that call themselves climate group XYZ, right? Whereas a lot of groups that actually contribute to the struggle for climate justice don't necessarily understand themselves primarily as climate groups, right? So an indigenous anti-pipeline struggle in so-called Canada, right, is an essential contribution to the climate justice struggle. But and we're going to see the film, right? But I think a lot of people who are active in it would not necessarily call themselves climate activists. They might call themselves land defenders, or other terms, right? So I think, yeah, I think the question of the we is really important to consider, actually, and sort of, I think, to have a broader we is very important. And sometimes I feel that climate movements often, you know, originate from a certain positionality. So Fridays for Future came from Sweden, Extinction Rebellion came from England, and very quickly you had groups like Extinction Rebellion Pakistan or Fridays for Future, you know, India, Chile, and so on. So you had a strategy and a tactic and a language that was very quickly adopted around the globe. And I sometimes wish that in Europe we would more often do it the other way around and really look at the very many really good and really important movement that exists in the global south, and sort of, you know, open a branch of them in Germany or in other places, because I often feel that the directionality mainly goes one way. Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Can I?
Yes,
it took me a little bit.
And there's a question.
Yeah.
We will take that one, of course. Yes, please.
I was saying that I was really thinking a little bit on this question, because this we question, whenever, like right now I am here with a microphone, we, and I also introduce myself, like I hope I can, you know, convey the message of movements with whom we have been working in Serbia, in Portugal, and also in Chile, because I do feel responsible. And then this we, sometimes I choose it in purpose. Like for instance, when I try to talk about a climate justice issue, I get to say we people that live in Germany. Yeah, I do live in Germany after 11 years of living here. Now I have also a German passport. Now I also talk our government, because now I can vote for our government. So I don't like to feel myself totally like out of the problem, or also to say to people, you know what, I am, you are, is like we are all in this. And sometimes I feel it's very important to invite everyone to really think about where are we going. Because it's not just me going somewhere when I ever think like, okay, of this beautiful world that I want for us to live in. It's like, no, we are all part of this. And this is why this we is also a choice. It's like, I want to say what I was saying, our government, our neighborhood, our, you know, this is the we that we choose. I don't feel like I can be totally like an individual anymore. That just, yeah, I have my opinion and what I want to do, but I definitely occupy one place in this whole beautiful system, or very weak system that I am also in. And I think it's very important to try to just take that, I don't know, just maybe my 2 cents.
Beautiful 2 cents. there was a question. I'm handing back the microphone.
So while I was listening to you, I just checked in with myself and I realized if I'm honest with myself, I'm just watching the world dying slowly, day by day. And I have very little hope left that any of the struggles and pursuits that we attempted so far will carry us to the solution we all want. And you said that, Elias, you said climate change is everything change, and we should think about it in revolutionary terms. And there's just this huge misalignment of the collective action problem and the individual incentives that we get from the system we create. So how do we overthrow the system? And is there maybe a little bit of a thinking blockage in the climate justice movement when it concerns, for instance, things like nonviolence and destruction of infrastructure and so on? So I'm just inviting a free conversation on this, not having a conclusion, obviously. Thank you.
Go first.
Well, I hope we can get a hug. No, really, I mean it. Because we really need just to, I also have the days when I also feel like, well, this is not working out. But then again, I also think it's a thing of memory. What I was saying before, this world and we have endured circumstances already 500 years plus. So we really need to think that there's so much that we can save, so much. And I had at some point to just think to myself, there's so much that we can save. And this is what I'm going to decide to fight for. Because I understand that we have caused so much damage to this planet already and to each other that I am like, this is gone, right? And there's a capacity still to regenerate certain things, but there are certain that are gone. So I am really just going to stick to all what we can save. And this is going to be my mission, and I think really, if I am going to live, 70 plus years in this planet, I'm going for it. And I hope you too, and that there's this we, because movements are also made out of 5 people that came together, or there's more until they became this movement. So this is also why movements and communities and groups and friends really have to come together in the midst of these times. That's what I would say. So
that's absolutely true and beautiful. And maybe I said that before. I had this moment reading the newspaper like a few days ago. I'm Austrian. Maybe that explains a bit. I didn't want to be part of the we at that moment, to be honest. That also comes at certain points. But then I saw friends in Vienna organizing walks on the street as a form of protest, like beautiful actions, which made me remember, yes, we have been there several times in history, and we always found good solutions out there. And that gave me hope coming back, like, it's as long as we stay somehow human, we will find solutions and be positive, maybe. But that's my thought on it, maybe. Elias.
Yeah, I find it so touching, or I found it so touching when you shared about your niece, right? And sort of thinking, who do we do activism for? Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, it's more than themselves, right? Yeah, and I think that can be a source of hope for sure, or for inspiration. I'm actually not really a very hopeful person usually, and I think sometimes it's also okay to work from the assumption of a healthy pessimism of the intellect, right? And to say that, okay, so I don't know, this might not change that much, but let's try it anyways. I think that actually helps you retain some energy as well and keep going, because this is going to be a very long struggle. And I think partly the problem with these, I think it goes ever quicker in this age of social media and so on. People burn out really quickly, and sort of you organize demonstrations for a year and you realize, oh my gosh, the world hasn't changed. I'm gonna stop now or what, right? Like, I think we can really get ready for like a decades-long struggle, but that shouldn't keep us from fighting. And I completely agree that actually there's a few new publications in the field of moral philosophy and political theory that all say that, yeah, in face of like a threat like climate disaster, which is an insane amount of suffering already in the world, like it's really hard to put in words, that a lot of different forms of action are absolutely morally permissible, and that the climate movement so far hasn't really, used its full arsenal of things that you could do that are actually quite justified in terms of what we're facing. So I agree with that, yeah.
I think we all need to watch a really good film now. It's a beautiful film, it's a strong film, and it shows that giving up is not an option. We need like 2 minutes to start the beamer. So if you need to leave your seat for a second, grab a drink to hold on during the film, please feel free, and we will start the beamer and start in a second. Thank you so for joining us, and I hope you will have a beautiful conversation after the film.
Thanks a lot.
And it's worth reading, and we have it here, so if you want to listen more, feel free to approach us.